The Bible lay on my lap like it always had, soft leather worn from years of my husband's hands turning the pages. It was the one thing he had carried everywhere, from our first tiny apartment to the big house he insisted we buy after his business took off. He used to tell me, "Everything I need is in here, Eleanor. Guidance, strength, answers." I believed him. I believed every word that ever came out of his mouth, because for nearly 40 years, Robert was my world. He was the steady rock when life got messy, the calm voice when bills piled up or when our son stayed out too late. I never thought there was anything about him I didn't know. That morning started like any other. The sunlight slid through the lace curtains in the kitchen, warming my coffee cup. I had been tidying the attic, pulling down old boxes to donate, when I found his Bible resting inside a cracked cedar chest. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Robert had passed 6 months ago, sudden and cruel. A heart attack, the doctors said, though I always felt there was something more behind the way his eyes had looked in those last moments, something unsettled. But grief makes you see ghosts, and I had taught myself to push those thoughts away. I sat at the table, opened the Bible to where the ribbon marked a page, and a folded piece of yellowed paper slipped out. It fluttered to the floor like a dead leaf. I bent to pick it up, expecting a prayer or maybe one of his notes about household things. Instead, the words scrawled across it stopped my breath cold. "If she discovers the truth, kill her." My whole body locked up. The paper shook in my hand. The handwriting was his, Robert's. Slanted letters, slightly uneven because of the old injury he'd gotten in his wrist during college baseball. I had seen him write thousands of notes, grocery lists, reminders, little "I love you" messages left on the fridge. This was his hand. There was no mistaking it. For a long time, I just stared at the words, my coffee growing cold beside me. My mind raced. Who was she? Me? Another woman? And what truth could be so terrible it came with instructions to kill? I thought of all the years I had trusted him with everything, our finances, our safety, my heart. Had I been living with a man capable of murder? My stomach turned at the thought. I wanted to believe it was some kind of twisted joke, maybe a line he had copied from somewhere, or a scrap that got mixed up with his Bible. But Robert wasn't a man who joked in that way. He was serious, private, controlled. And this note was tucked in the very book he claimed guided his soul. I read it again. The words seemed darker now, heavier. "If she discovers the truth, kill her." My chair scraped loudly against the tile as I stood, clutching the note. I felt suddenly exposed, as if someone were watching me through the window. I pulled the curtains shut, my heart hammering. I tried to breathe, tried to calm myself, but the memory of Robert's last months clawed at me, his late-night phone calls he brushed off as work, his sudden business trips, the way he had started locking his office desk. Things I had chalked up to stress. What if this was the truth clawing its way out of the grave? I thought of calling my son, Daniel. He adored his father, worshipped him even, and part of me wanted his comfort. But another part of me hesitated. What if Daniel already knew? What if the truth wasn't just Robert's secret but theirs? I hated myself for even thinking it, but the note burned in my hand like fire, unraveling trust one didn't know could fray. Instead, I reached for my phone and dialed Arthur, Robert's oldest friend and our attorney. He had been at Robert's side since they were young men. If anyone knew what this meant, it would be him. "Arthur," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need you to come by. It's important." He must have heard the edge in my tone because he didn't ask questions. "I'll be there in an hour," he said. When he arrived, I handed him the note without a word. I watched his face pale as he read it. He didn't laugh it off or dismiss it. Instead, he set it down slowly on the table and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, fear. "Where did you find this?" he asked quietly. "In Robert's Bible," I whispered. "Tell me it's some kind of mistake." Arthur rubbed his temple, avoiding my eyes. "Eleanor, there are things about Robert you may not want to know." The floor seemed to tilt under me. My knees weakened. What things? What truth? He hesitated. I saw him wrestling with words, weighing them. Finally, he sighed. Before Robert passed, he came to me with some unusual requests. He wanted to set up accounts I couldn't fully trace. Offshore, private. When I asked why, he said it was for your protection. That's all he'd tell me. I never saw this note before, but what, Arthur? My voice cracked. He lowered his eyes. I think Robert was involved in something dangerous. And if this note is real, it means he wasn't just protecting you, he was hiding something from you. I felt my stomach churn. Arthur, are you saying my husband was, what? A criminal? A murderer? Arthur raised his hand. I don't know. But Eleanor, I need you to be very careful. If Robert left instructions like this, it means someone else may have them too. Someone alive. The walls of my kitchen closed in on me. For the first time in my life, I felt unsafe in my own home. I wanted to scream, to tear the note into pieces and pretend it didn't exist. But I couldn't unsee it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I found myself checking the locks twice, 3 times. I slid Robert's Bible back into the cedar chest and shoved the chest into the closet, as if hiding it would hide the danger. But the words echoed in my head, if she discovers the truth, kill her. By morning, I knew I couldn't sit idle. If there was a truth buried in Robert's life, I had to find it, no matter how much it hurt. I started in his office, rifling through drawers, files, anything that might explain the note. Most of it was ordinary, tax papers, business receipts, family photos. But then I found a locked metal box at the bottom of the cabinet. The key was missing. My hands trembled as I set it on the desk. Robert had never hidden anything from me before. Whatever was in this box, I felt it pulsing like a secret ready to detonate. I reached for a letter opener, jamming it into the lock, desperate to pry it open. Sweat slicked my palms as the metal groaned. Finally, with a loud snap, the lock broke. I lifted the lid. Inside were bundles of cash, thousands of dollars in crisp $100 bills. Tucked beneath them were several passports. Not 1, not 2, but 3, all with Robert's photo, each under a different name. My breath left me in a rush. This was no mistake. My husband had been living a double life. Maybe even triple. And buried under the stack of passports was another folded note. My hands shook as I opened it, praying it would explain, praying it would tell me this was all some misunderstanding. But the words scrawled inside froze me in place. You can't trust Arthur. I read the note again and again, each time my stomach knotting tighter. You can't trust Arthur. The words were in the same familiar slanted handwriting as the first note, unmistakably Robert's. My husband had written them. But why? Arthur had been our friend for decades. He had been the best man at our wedding. He had helped Robert draft his will, guided us through mortgage papers, sat at our table during holidays. He had been the one I turned to the day Robert died because I believed his loyalty was unshakable. And yet here, in my husband's secret box, Robert warned me against him. I sat at the desk staring at the passports and the cash, the heavy metal box open before me, and felt like I had just stepped into a labyrinth where every hallway was lined with shadows. If I couldn't trust Arthur, who could I trust? Had he already lied to me when I showed him the first note? He had said Robert set up offshore accounts, but what if Arthur was part of it? What if the entire story about protecting me was a cover? A sharp noise from outside the window made me flinch. The crunch of gravel on the driveway. I rushed to the curtains and peeked through the slats. A car I didn't recognize sat at the curb, engine idling. Dark-tinted windows. My pulse leapt. It could have been anyone, but my gut told me this was no coincidence. Not after the notes. Not after the box. I quickly shoved everything back into the metal box, carried it to my bedroom, and shoved it beneath the mattress. I would deal with it later. By the time I returned to the window, the car was gone. The only sound left was the hammering of my own heart. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the paranoia. Every ring of the phone made me jump. Every passerby on the street felt like a pair of eyes watching me. I knew I needed answers, and there was only one way to get them: dig deeper into Robert's hidden life. That night, when the house was silent, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat back down at the desk. I spread out the passports. One had Robert's photo but the name read David Monroe. Another was Michael Stone. The third, Joseph Clark. Each had different birth dates and places of origin, but all had his face. They weren't fakes a child could make with a printer. These were official, with holograms, stamps, and barcodes. And tucked in the flap of one was a plane ticket stub. A flight to Zurich. Date, 2 years ago. I thought back to the time Robert told me he had to fly to Dallas for a client meeting. He was gone for 4 days. Zurich wasn't Dallas. What had he been doing there? The wine did nothing to calm me. My nerves burned. I needed proof. Something more solid. I opened Robert's laptop, an old one I had kept in the closet after his death. It was password protected, but Robert wasn't creative with passwords. I tried his birthday. Wrong. I tried Daniel's birthday. Wrong again. Finally, I typed in Genesis 1:23, the verse he always quoted. The screen blinked and unlocked. Relief flooded me, followed quickly by dread at what I might find. His desktop was ordinary, cluttered with spreadsheets and old files. But in a folder labeled Insurance was a series of encrypted documents. My pulse quickened as I tried to open one, only to be met with a request for another password. I cursed under my breath. And then, in the corner of the desktop, I noticed a folder labeled Letters. Inside were drafts of emails Robert had never sent. Some were to Arthur. Some were to people I didn't know. But one stopped me cold. It was addressed to me, but never delivered. Eleanor, it began, if you ever find this, it means I didn't have the courage to tell you in person. I kept secrets from you, not because I didn't love you, but because love made me weak. I couldn't risk you knowing everything. Arthur has his own motives. Trust him only as far as the law requires. The rest, well, the rest you'll see soon enough. If she ever finds out, things will spiral out of control. Protect yourself, no matter what. And remember, not everyone who calls you family deserves that title. It ended abruptly, unsigned. I sat back in the chair, my chest tightening. If she ever finds out. Was he talking about me? Or another woman? Who was she? And what exactly would spiral out of control? My husband had lived with secrets tangled so tightly I could barely unravel them. The next morning, I decided to test Arthur. I called him and invited him for coffee, pretending as if nothing had changed. He arrived with his usual warm smile, but I noticed something different now, a tension in his eyes, as if he were watching me more closely than usual. I slid the Bible across the table. I put it back, I said softly. But Arthur, I've been thinking. What if Robert had more than one set of accounts? Arthur froze for a fraction of a second, then covered it with a sip of coffee. What makes you say that? Oh, just a feeling, I said, feigning casualness. I thought maybe I should look into it myself. He gave a thin smile. Eleanor, it's complicated. Those accounts were meant for protection. If you go digging without guidance, you could attract the wrong attention. The wrong attention. His words sent a chill through me. Did he know about the car that had idled outside yesterday? Or was he warning me of something else? Don't worry, he said, patting my hand. I'll handle everything. As he spoke, I remembered Robert's note, you can't trust Arthur. The moment he left, I locked the door and leaned against it, my breath ragged. I couldn't tell if Arthur was protecting me or keeping me blind. Either way, I had to get ahead of him. That evening, Daniel came by. My son, my only child, my last anchor. I wanted to tell him everything, but when I looked at him, his easy smile, his father's eyes, I hesitated. What if he knew something? What if Robert had confided in him and Daniel chose loyalty to his father's secrets over me? Mom, are you okay? He asked, studying me. You've been pale lately. You're not eating. I forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. He didn't seem convinced. He lingered longer than usual, asking about bills, about whether I needed help around the house. A tender gesture, or was he checking for weaknesses? The paranoia was eating me alive. That night, unable to sleep, I pulled the metal box from under the mattress. I spread everything across the bed, the cash, the passports, the notes. I whispered to the silence, what did you do, Robert? Who were you? Then, as I sifted through the cash, I noticed something odd. One of the bills felt thicker than the others. I held it up to the light. It wasn't just money, it was a sleeve, hiding a slip of paper inside. Carefully, I pulled it out. It was another note. This one was shorter. Just 3 words, written in Robert's hand, rushed and jagged as if scribbled in panic. They know already. My throat went dry. Who were they? Arthur? Daniel? Someone else? The house suddenly felt too quiet, too exposed. I stuffed the evidence back into the box, shoved it into the closet, and sat awake until dawn, staring at the locked door. By sunrise, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. If they already knew, then I was in danger whether I hid or not. I called Diana, my sister in Chicago. She answered on the third ring. "Ellie? It's early. What's wrong?" "I need you here," I whispered. "Please." I can't explain on the phone, but I found something in Robert's things. Notes. Cash. Passports. "Diana, I think someone wants me dead." The line went silent for a long moment. Then her voice, steady but urgent, "Pack a bag. I'm on my way." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Someone I could trust. Someone who had no stake in Robert's secrets. My own blood. But that hope lasted only a few hours. That afternoon, I went to the mailbox. Inside was a plain white envelope with no return address. My name was typed neatly on the front. I carried it inside with shaking hands, tore it open, and pulled out a single photograph. It was me. Standing at the kitchen window the night before, Robert's Bible open on the table. And scrolled across the bottom in red ink were the words, "Stop digging, or next time it won't be a picture." The photo slipped from my hand and floated to the floor, but the words burned into my mind. "Stop digging, or next time it won't be a picture." My knees weakened. Someone had been outside my home, camera trained on me, close enough to capture my face through the kitchen window. That wasn't some idle threat scrawled on a scrap of paper from years ago. This was real now, immediate. Whoever Robert had been tangled with, they hadn't gone away after his death. They were here, alive, watching me. I double-locked the doors, yanked the curtains shut, and sat on the sofa clutching the photograph. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold it. For the first time in my life, I considered calling the police. But what would I tell them? That my dead husband left me notes warning me about his best friend? That someone slipped a photo into my mailbox? That I had passports and cash hidden under my mattress? Without proof of a crime, they'd think I was paranoid, a grieving widow unraveling. No, I couldn't risk that. If the police contacted Arthur or Daniel as part of an investigation, they'd know I was exposing the secrets. If Arthur really was compromised, if Robert was right about him, I'd be putting myself in even greater danger. I needed to think smart. And that meant getting help outside the circle Robert had drawn around me. When Diana arrived from Chicago the next day, I almost collapsed into her arms. Her presence was a lifeline. My older sister had always been the blunt one, the fighter, the woman who didn't bend to anyone. If anyone could steady me, it was her. "What in God's name is going on, Ellie?" she asked, setting her suitcase down. "You sounded terrified." Wordlessly, I handed her the photo. She studied it, jaw tightening. "Someone's stalking you. This isn't paranoia." I pulled out the metal box, laying everything on the dining table, the cash, the passports, the notes. Diana's eyes widened as she sifted through them. What the hell was Robert mixed up in? Fake identities? Offshore accounts? "Ellie, this is serious." Her voice cracked something inside me, and I started to cry. "I don't know who to trust, Dee. Robert said not to trust Arthur. But Arthur's been like family for decades. And Daniel," my throat tightened. "I don't know if he's innocent or if he knows something too." Diana squeezed my hand. "Then we don't tell either of them." "Not yet. We figure this out ourselves." For the first time, I felt a shred of relief. I wasn't alone anymore. That night, Diana and I pored over the contents of the metal box. We counted nearly $50,000 in cash. Enough to run, if it came to that. Enough to survive if Robert had been planning an escape. The passports raised more questions than answers, but when Diana inspected the ticket stub, her brows furrowed. "Zurich," she said. "Ellie, Zurich is a banking capital. If Robert went there, he wasn't on a business trip. He was moving money." We searched the passports for clues, and tucked behind the one marked Michael Stone, we found another slip of paper, a locker number and a combination, written on hotel stationery from a place downtown. Diana whistled. "Looks like your husband had a stash spot. If it's still there, it might explain everything." My pulse quickened. A lead. Finally, something tangible. The next morning, we drove into the city. The hotel was a towering glass structure near the financial district. We walked in pretending to be guests, making our way to the basement where the safety lockers were stored. My hands trembled as I spun the dial to match the numbers on the slip of paper. The lock clicked. Inside was a thick envelope. My heart pounded as I slid it out, glancing nervously around the empty room. We retreated to the car before opening it. Inside were documents, dozens of them. Bank transfers, contracts, coded ledgers. And at the very bottom, photographs. I spread them across my lap, and the air caught in my throat. One was of Arthur, sitting in a restaurant with a man I didn't recognize, shaking hands over a briefcase. Another of Daniel, my son, entering an office building I'd never seen before. The date stamped on the back was from 3 months ago, after Robert's death. My head spun. And then the last photo nearly made me drop everything. It was of me, sitting in church at Robert's funeral, my black veil covering my face. The angle suggested someone had been behind me, watching. Jesus, Diana whispered. Ellie, this isn't just about Robert. They're watching all of you. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but fear swallowed my voice. If Arthur was involved, if Daniel was involved, then I was surrounded on all sides. Who could I trust? That night, back at home, I hid the envelope in the oven's warming drawer, the last place anyone would look. Diana insisted we take shifts staying awake. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching the front door, while I tried to sleep. But sleep never came. Every sound outside seemed louder. Every shadow deeper. At 3 a.m., Diana shook me awake. Ellie, there's someone outside. We crept to the window. A figure stood at the edge of the yard, silhouetted by the streetlight. Tall, broad-shouldered, unmoving. Watching the house. My stomach lurched. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but before I could, headlights flashed. A car pulled up, and the figure climbed in. The vehicle sped away, leaving silence in its wake. Diana gripped my arm. This isn't random. They're sending a message. The next morning, my son arrived unannounced. He stood in the doorway, his expression tight. Mom, we need to talk. Diana stiffened beside me, arms crossed. Daniel glanced at her, then back at me. It's private. No, Diana said firmly. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of me. Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. Fine. Mom, Arthur says you've been acting paranoid. He told me you think Dad was hiding things. He thinks grief is messing with you. Anger flared hot in my chest. Paranoid? Arthur told you that? Daniel nodded. He's worried about you. I am too. Mom, if there's money or papers, you need to let Arthur handle them. That's what Dad wanted. My breath caught. How did he know about money or papers unless Arthur told him? My mind raced, suspicion curdling my stomach. Was Robert right? Was Arthur pulling Daniel into his web? I'm fine, I said tightly. And I don't need Arthur or anyone handling things for me. Daniel frowned. Mom, please. I'm just trying to help. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see the little boy I raised. I saw a man keeping secrets. When he left, Diana grabbed my shoulders. Do you see? Arthur's in his ear. If Robert didn't trust him, you can't either. And now Daniel might be compromised. I sank into a chair, trembling. My son. My own flesh and blood. Was he working against me, knowingly or not? And standing there waiting for me, was a face I never expected to see. That night, Diana urged me to leave the house, to go somewhere safe until we figured things out. I packed a small bag and stuffed the envelope of documents inside. We planned to drive to her home in Chicago. But as I zipped my suitcase shut, the phone rang. I nearly ignored it, but something compelled me to pick up. A voice I didn't recognize spoke softly. Mrs. Vance, if you want to live, meet me tomorrow at noon. Hotel Ashland, room 412. Come alone. Bring what your husband left behind. My breath caught. Who is this? What do you want? The line clicked dead. I turned to Diana, my face pale. They want me to bring the documents. And they know I have them. Diana grabbed my hand. Ellie, this is a trap. You can't go. But deep inside, I knew I couldn't run forever. Robert's secrets had already swallowed me whole. If I didn't confront whoever was behind this, I would never be free. The next day, as the clock inched toward noon, I stood outside Hotel Ashland, clutching my bag. My heart hammered so hard I could barely breathe. I walked through the revolving doors, the world blurring around me. I pressed the elevator button for the 4th floor. Each ding as the numbers rose echoed like a countdown. Room 412 was at the end of the hall. I raised my trembling hand, knocked once, and the door opened slowly. Arthur stood in the doorway. His eyes flickered with something between surprise and calculation, but his mouth twisted into a smile that didn't reach them. "Eleanor," he said softly, as though he'd been expecting me all along. My heart slammed against my ribs. My mind screamed to run, to turn back toward the elevator, but my feet betrayed me. I stepped into the room as if pulled by invisible strings. The door clicked shut behind me, and the sound was final, a lock sealing me inside a trap. Arthur gestured toward a chair near the window. "Please, sit." The room was ordinary, nondescript. Beige wallpaper, a single bed, a lamp glowing in the corner. But it wasn't the decor that chilled me. It was the man standing inches away, Robert's best friend, the man I had known for 3 decades. Now every memory, cookouts, late-night conversations, birthdays, curled into something grotesque. "You got my call," Arthur said. His voice was calm, too calm, like someone negotiating a business deal. My throat tightened. "That was you." "Of course. Who else would it be? You've been poking around places you shouldn't. The safety deposit box, the documents. You weren't supposed to find those." I clutched my bag closer, feigning ignorance. "I don't know what you're talking about." Arthur's smile widened. "Don't insult me, Eleanor. Robert didn't trust me, but he trusted you. That was his mistake. He left you holding the match that could set this entire house of cards on fire." My pulse roared in my ears. What house of cards? Arthur moved closer, his shadow swallowing mine. "Robert was into things he didn't tell you. Offshore accounts, transactions, agreements with people who don't forgive mistakes. He thought he could outsmart them, play both sides. But he underestimated just how dangerous they are." I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. "And you? What part did you play?" Arthur's eyes hardened. "I was supposed to keep him in line. Make sure he didn't run his mouth. But your husband was stubborn. He wanted out. He thought he could protect you by keeping you in the dark. But in doing so, he put you in more danger than he ever imagined." The words hit like blows. "So the note, the one in his Bible." Arthur tilted his head. "He really left that for you?" Then he knew I'd been ordered to silence him if he exposed the truth. "But I didn't kill him, Eleanor." "No. He did that himself when he decided to defy them. His heart gave out, but not because of me." My hands clenched around the strap of my bag. "Then why am I here? Why call me?" Arthur leaned in, lowering his voice. "Because they're watching you. They know you have the documents. They know you've seen the photographs. And if you don't hand them over, they won't hesitate to finish what Robert started." I stared at him, horror slicing through me. "They? Who are they?" He shook his head. "Names won't protect you. But I can. Give me the documents, Eleanor. I'll make sure you and Daniel are left alone." At the mention of my son, my blood ran cold. "Daniel." Arthur nodded slowly. "He's already on their radar. He's young, ambitious, vulnerable. He doesn't know the half of what's at play, but if you force their hand, they'll use him. They'll use anyone close to you." My mind whirled. Was this manipulation, or was he telling the truth? I couldn't tell anymore. The line between reality and deception had blurred until I couldn't see the edges. "I need time," I whispered. "To think." Arthur's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. "You don't have time. Tonight. I'll come for them tonight." He opened the door, signaling the meeting was over. "Don't make me be the one to clean up the mess Robert left." I stumbled out into the hallway, my legs barely holding me. The elevator ride down felt like descending into a pit. By the time I reached the street, my breaths were shallow gasps. Diana was waiting in the car, her eyes widening when she saw me. "Ellie, what happened? You're white as a sheet." I climbed in, clutching her arm. "It was Arthur. He called me. He knows everything. He wants the documents tonight." Diana's face hardened. "And if you give them to him, do you think he'll stop there?" "No. He'll silence you too." Tears stung my eyes. "He mentioned Daniel. He said they'll come after him." Diana gripped the steering wheel, fury blazing in her eyes. "Then we fight back. We use the documents, not hand them over. We expose them." "But how? Who would believe us? The police? The FBI?" We didn't even know exactly what we were holding. That night, we spread the papers across the dining table, scrutinizing every line. Diana noticed something I had missed: coded initials scribbled in the margins of several contracts. "These match," she whispered. "Look, RV, AC Robert Vance, Arthur Caldwell. They were signing off on these deals together." The room spun around me. Robert and Arthur had both been complicit. My husband hadn't been innocent, not completely. But the difference was clear: Robert had tried to get out. Arthur had stayed in. My faith in everything I thought I knew crumbled. The man I had built a life with, the man whose Bible sat on my nightstand, had lived a double life so dangerous it was now swallowing me whole. At dawn, we drove to Diana's friend, a retired journalist named Howard who had once worked on financial crime investigations. He lived in a cluttered apartment above a bookstore, his walls lined with yellowing files. "Show me," he said, peering through thick glasses as we laid out the documents. 4 hours, he cross-referenced dates, highlighted names, and scribbled notes. Finally, he looked up, his face pale. "This isn't just small-time fraud. These are shell companies tied to international arms deals. Millions funneled offshore. Eleanor, if this is real, your husband and Arthur were laundering money for very powerful people." The room seemed to tilt. "Arms deals." Howard nodded grimly. "And if you have these papers, it means someone's missing them. They'll kill to get them back." The weight of it crashed over me. My husband had left me not just with grief, but with evidence that could destroy lives, mine included. That night, we stayed at a motel on the outskirts of town, too afraid to return home. I barely slept, haunted by visions of Robert's face, Arthur's voice, Daniel's innocence caught in the crossfire. At sunrise, my phone buzzed with a new message. No number, just the words: "Last chance. Tonight. Hand it over, or Daniel pays." I nearly dropped the phone. Diana snatched it from my hand, her face flushing with rage. "That's it. We go to the authorities. Not local police. Federal." But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at me. If Arthur had connections, if these people were as powerful as Howard suggested, could we trust anyone? As we debated, headlights swept across the motel curtains. My stomach lurched. Diana crept to the window, her face draining of color. "Ellie," she whispered. "It's Daniel." I rushed to the door, flung it open. My son stood in the parking lot, his face pale, eyes darting around. "Mom, you have to come with me. Arthur says you're in danger. We need to get you somewhere safe." Every instinct screamed trap, but my heart twisted at the sight of him. He was my boy. My only child. Diana grabbed my arm. "Don't you dare, Ellie. Look at him, he's not alone." I followed her gaze. Another figure stood by the car. "Arthur." Daniel's voice cracked. "Mom, please. Trust me. We can fix this." Arthur stepped forward, his eyes cold. "Eleanor. It's time to choose." The night air felt thick, every breath sharp in my chest as if the world itself was holding me hostage. Arthur's gaze pinned me down, unblinking, cold, demanding. Daniel, my boy, my only boy, stood beside him, torn pale, but tethered to Arthur as if some invisible cord tied them together. My instincts screamed danger. My mother's heart screamed to save my son. And the bag pressed against my ribs, the bag with documents worth blood and betrayal, burned like fire. "Daniel," I whispered, stepping forward, ignoring Arthur's looming shadow. "Come here. Just you and me." He shifted, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "Mom, please. Arthur's right. You're in danger. We just need to give them what they want, and this will all go away. His words cut deeper than knives. Arthur's right. He wasn't just following, he believed him. My throat ached, but I forced myself to stand taller. And what exactly do they want, Daniel? My silence? My life? The truth buried forever. Arthur's voice sliced through the air. They want what your husband stole. What you shouldn't even know exists. Hand it over, Eleanor. Don't make this harder. I looked at Daniel, my boy who once ran into my arms after nightmares, who once whispered I love you, Mom, with sticky fingers and a child's honesty. Now his eyes avoided mine, shame flickering but not enough to sever Arthur's grip. My heart broke in ways words could never reach. Diana's hand pressed firmly on my shoulder, grounding me. She leaned in, whispering, "Don't give them an inch. Not one damn inch." Arthur stepped closer. "You think you can outsmart them? Outrun them? Eleanor, you're an old woman standing in the way of something bigger than you'll ever understand. You'll lose. And Daniel will lose with you." The fury that surged in me then was not the fragile trembling of fear, but the volcanic strength of every sacrifice I had made. I pulled the bag from under my arm, holding it up. Arthur's eyes glinted. Daniel's lips parted. For one small moment, I held their entire world in my hands. And then, without hesitation, I hurled it toward Diana. "Run!" I shouted. Chaos erupted. Diana bolted toward the car, clutching the bag, while Arthur lunged forward, cursing. Daniel grabbed my wrist, torn between restraining me and chasing his aunt. "Mom, why are you doing this?" I yanked free, my voice raw. "Because I won't let your father's lies, or Arthur's poison, destroy what little I have left." Diana's tires squealed as she sped out of the motel lot, the bag safe in her hands. Arthur turned on me, his composure shattered, fury radiating off him. "You don't know what you've done," he growled. "Yes, I do," I whispered, my voice steady despite the tremor in my bones. "I've stopped you." The next hours blurred. Arthur dragged Daniel into his car, vanishing into the night, leaving me standing in the motel parking lot, heart fractured, but spirit unbroken. Diana called me at dawn. She'd driven straight to Howard, the retired journalist, delivering the documents into his hands. "He's already contacting federal agents," she said. "It's bigger than we imagined, Ellie. Arms deals, laundering, political payoffs, it's all here. We've lit a fuse they can't put out." For days, I lived on edge, waiting for retribution. Every knock on the door made me flinch, every passing car slowed my breath. Then the news broke. A federal task force had raided multiple offices across the state. Names tied to the ledgers were splashed across headlines. Politicians, businessmen, even a judge. And among them, Arthur Caldwell. The images on the television showed Arthur in handcuffs, his jaw tight, eyes glaring at the cameras. Sources say Caldwell is believed to have played a key role in funneling illegal funds overseas. The anchor's voice was steady, clinical. To me, it was vindication. But victory came bitter. Daniel's name was never mentioned on the news, but he stopped answering my calls. Weeks stretched into months with silence between us. I told myself he'd been manipulated, that Arthur's hold on him had blurred his judgment. But a darker thought gnawed at me. Maybe a part of him had chosen the lies because they promised wealth, power, something easier than the hard truth. Nights were hardest. I sat at Robert's desk, staring at the empty spot where his Bible once rested. The note still haunted me: "If she discovers the truth, kill her." He'd left it as a warning, but also as a confession. My husband had lived a life I never fully knew. And he had left me carrying the weight of his sins. One evening, Diana knocked on my door with a box in her arms. "Howard thought you should have this," she said. Inside were copies of the documents, sealed in plastic, labeled Evidence Archive. At the bottom lay a photograph of Robert, one I'd never seen before. He was younger, smiling at the camera, eyes bright, holding me at some long-forgotten picnic. Howard had found it tucked into the folder, perhaps left there by Robert himself, a reminder that not every part of him was a lie. I pressed the photo to my chest, tears spilling. "Why, Robert? Why didn't you just tell me?" Diana sat beside me. "Because he wanted to protect you. He just went about it all wrong." Weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Daniel's handwriting. "Mom, I don't know how to face you right now. I was blind. I let Arthur twist me, and I almost let him twist you too. I need time. Please don't give up on me. Love, Daniel." I clutched the letter, hope and grief colliding in my chest. My son wasn't lost, not completely. He was fighting his own demons, his own shame. And maybe one day when the smoke cleared, we'd find our way back to each other. The investigation widened, headlines stretched across months. Families torn apart, fortunes seized, powerful men toppled. And in the quiet of my little house, I learned to breathe again. I planted flowers in the backyard, the way Robert and I once did before the lies. I joined Diana for long walks, her laughter cutting through the shadows that had followed me. Some nights, I sat on the porch with Howard and Diana, sipping tea while we talked about everything except betrayal. But some nights, when the wind rustled through the trees, I swore I heard Robert's voice, low and distant, whispering apologies I'd never truly hear. The Bible still sits on my nightstand. Its pages are worn, its spine fragile, but I keep it there as a reminder. Not of the note that nearly destroyed me, but of the truth that saved me. Secrets rot in darkness, but once dragged into the light, they lose their power. I've lived long enough to understand that love can blind as much as it can heal. Robert blinded me with his secrets. Arthur tried to blind me with his threats. But the truth, sharp, painful, merciless, gave me back my sight. And though my heart still aches for my son, though the scars will never fully fade, I know this much: I am alive. I am free. And no one, not Arthur, not Robert, not even the men behind the shadows, can take that from me again. Because in the end, when the lies crumbled, when the darkness closed in, I chose not to be the woman clutching a Bible and trembling over secrets. I chose to be the woman who dragged them into the open, who fought, who survived. And that choice, that fire, is what will carry me through whatever comes next.